So thank you everyone for coming to the Department of English, Rhetoric, and Writing second annual David James Poisson Endowed Creative Prose Reading Series. My name is Will Donnelly. I teach creative writing here at Barry College, and I coordinate this reading series with the help of Sandra Meek. The David James Poisson Creative Prose Reading Series, named after Barry alumnus Jamie Poisson, brings a writer of fiction or creative nonfiction to the Barry campus each year, and will do so in perpetuity once fully endowed. That writer will give a free reading open to the college and local community, and will meet with students to discuss creative prose in a class setting as well. Thank you so much to all the generous donors who have already contributed and helped to make this wonderful opportunity a reality. Thank you so much to all of the, I lost my place, excuse me. Please bear in mind too that we still need your help in order to reach our minimum goal. And if you are able, we hope you will take the opportunity today to make a donation to help continue this series. It's my honor now to introduce you to Nina McConaughey. Nina is the author of Cowboys and East Indians, a story collection published by 5 Chapters Books, which won the 2014 PEN America Open Award and a High Plains Award, and was also longlisted for the 2014 Frank O'Connor International Short Story Award. Nina's work has twice been nominated for Pushcart Prize and for the Best New American Voices anthologies, and her story, Curating Your Life, which can be found in Cowboys and East Indians, was a notable story in the Best American Non-Required Reading anthology selected by Dave Eggers. Her fiction and nonfiction have also appeared in the New York Times, Orion, the Virginia Quarterly Review, Salon, American Short Fiction, Puerto del Sol, Asian American Literary Review, Slice Magazine, and elsewhere. She was born in Singapore, grew up in Wyoming, and now teaches at the University of Wyoming in Laramie. The stories in Cowboys and East Indians examine intersections of culture, ethnicity, race, and gender in Wyoming and in India. In Pomp and Circumstances, Chitra Sen, an Indian American woman, meets her husband's co-worker who reveals to her that he enjoys dressing up like a woman, and furthermore, that his wife likes when he does it. In Dot or Feather, a young Indian exchange student, Sindhu, visits Wyoming to study, where she takes babysitting jobs and soon learns how much she enjoys stealing from the homes in which she watches children. Washed in the Blood of the Lamb involves a church-going American, Helen, who travels to India and stays with the Christian family of a sister parish there. But the story reveals to us early on that she's not there for worship so much as to buy drugs on the black market. In large thematic terms, then, these stories have something in common with the fiction of Amy Tan, Teju Cole, and Paul Bowles. And yet, what sets Nina's work apart is their wonderful and strange ecstasy, the wonder that their characters often feel in the presence of the unfamiliar. Just when you think a story in this collection might be at its darkest, its saddest, or its most dangerous, its characters instead tremble in amazement at the world, sometimes even taking photographs to remember it by. And lastly, I'd like to say too that I'm grateful that Nina McConaughey could be here, not only because of her profound creative talent and literary knowledge, but also because, it's true, but also because she's among the friendliest, most encouraging, and most inspiring writers I know. And I hope you'll take the time after the reading to say hello to her in person. It's a true gift to have Nina here and to have her writing books for all of us to read. Please welcome Nina McConaughey.
Thank you. That was probably the nicest intro ever.
Okay, sorry, I'm gonna adjust this. Thank you. This is my first time in Georgia, and I was saying last night I had the most interesting shuttle tram driver ever who drove me from Atlanta to here, and he covered the Center for Disease Control, Coca-Cola. He gave me all sorts of factoids about, by the end of it, I was like in love with Georgia. So thank you so much for having me. So my story collection is called Cowboys and East Indians. I grew up in Wyoming. We moved to Wyoming from Singapore when I was 10 months old. My dad's a geologist, and that was bad. I don't need the podium. It's fine. We moved to Wyoming we moved to Wyoming. My dad's a geologist, and we sort of have always made our home there. And if you've spent time in Wyoming, you know it's the least populated state. So we just have over 500,000 in the whole state, but it's the 9th geographic largest state. So there are more antelope, more deer, and everyone growing up always thought I was the other kind of Indian, thought I was Native American. And so always, the first line of my book is we were the wrong kind of Indian, because everyone always asks what tribe I am, and that's kind of pretty common from the time I was a kid. So identity is something I've thought about a lot. I still live in Wyoming, and I teach at the University of Wyoming, and Wyoming is a beautiful state, Yellowstone and Grand Tetons, and everything about it is very spectacular, but it's also, it's pretty white. So I kind of write about that a little bit. So I'm going to read from the story called Pomp and Circumstances, and I won't finish the whole story, I'll just read an excerpt. And I would say buy a book if you want to know how it falls. Otherwise, I'll just tell you if you want to know how it comes out. They're all good. Okay, great. Then buy a book. I don't think you need to know any sort of background. Again, most of my stories are set in Wyoming. A few are set in India, but this one is a Wyoming story. The Shirley Basin seemed to be a big stretch of nothing that fell between Casper and Laramie. There was no cell phone coverage and not many houses, except a few small ranches slipped between strips of cottonwood-lined creeks and the bases of rising hills. The basin at one time had been a forest, lush, tropical, a swamp. Now every summer and into fall, people combed the sagebrush and scrub for petrified wood, for a small piece of Eden preserved. The basin is so rich with uranium that ghost towns once filled with miners lap at the edges. Low prices and oversupply has all but cut short business. In the early 90s, black-footed ferrets were released here. Once thought extinct, these little bandits thrive, feeding off prairie dogs and roaming the plains at night. Raja and Chitra Sen are heading across the basin to a graduation in Laramie. Their 8-year-old son Hari lies sleeping in the back seat. The graduation is for Raja's co-worker's son, Luke Larson. Richard Larson is proud of his son and has invited everyone in the office to attend the graduation. Raja is the only one going. One, because he's never been to an American graduation and thinks it'll be good for Hari, and two, because he finds Richard Larson hard to say no to. For months, Richard Larson has insisted upon calling him Senator. He has done this since he first saw Raja's name on a thin wooden nameplate on his desk, Raja Sen. Now all the other engineers in the office and even Bobby the secretary call Raja Senator. It is a nickname that sticks, that perseveres like a fossil. It is Chitra who states the obvious. Senator, didn't you tell him you're already a king? Raja says nothing. He is the only Indian in his office. Hari is the only Indian at his school. Chitra is one of 3 Indians in their house. They are one of maybe 6 Indian families in Casper. She perhaps has it the easiest. The drive is a little less than 2.5 hours, and they've been silent for most of it. Raja Sen thinks his wife is rude to the Larsons, as she had not wanted to come to the graduation. He thinks she's being difficult when it comes to making American friends. Raja knows that Chitra has been to the Larsons' house 3 times. One of those times they went together. It was a holiday party, an event for which they were instructed to bring a white elephant gift. Chitra had selected a soapstone elephant from a shelf in their house. On its flanks there was an inlay of garnet-colored stones, but at the party they realized they were not to bring elephants at all. They had gone home with a plastic reindeer. When you lifted its tail, small chocolates dropped out of its behind. Hari had screamed with pleasure. Chitra has told Raja that she has been invited for tea at the Larsons twice without him, with not just Richard Larson, but his wife Nancy, a thin, tanned woman who has a knack for matching outfits. She has deep-set eyes and wears a great deal of eyeliner. Chitra also wears eyeliner, kohl she has brought from Kolkata. Chitra's eyes look sleepy, the kohl making her exotic. Nancy just looks startled. Both times the Larsons had her over, Raja was out of town. Richard Larson had planned that. They actually drank coffee and not tea, and the second time Nancy Larson had baked, she had made a stack of lemon bars so thickly sprinkled with powdered sugar that Chitra looked as if talcum powder covered her sari. Chitra has said little about the Tees except she does not want to go back to their house again. If there's an office function, she would rather stay home. Raja is sure that Chitra has done something to offend them. At the Christmas party, Chitra, who was not used to wine, told outlandish stories of India. She told Richard and Nancy Larson that Hijras had danced at her and Raja's wedding, that they were good luck. Raja Sen saw Richard's face as she explained them to him, and Raja assured the last tea something must have been said, as Richard too has not mentioned Chitra. As they drive, Chitra thinks the snow fences look like abandoned snakeskins in the grass. They curve and bend and then stop abruptly. These wooden skeletons hold more than the skin of winter snow. Along this stretch, some ranchers use the fences to create large drifts in the basin. It gives them a ready supply of water in the spring. It is still spring now, and the prairie is in a green-up. Magpies lunge along the road. The smell of sagebrush is sweet. Plodding red Hereford and black Angus populate patches of the plain. They are loose stock as this is open range. Up in the hills and on Elk Mountain, which rises before them, snow still sits on the peaks, a bit like Nancy Larson's lemon bars, except underneath the peaks are rock and preserved things. Nancy's lemon bars, due to high altitude baking and dry air, only stay good for a day. When the Larsons first invited Chitra to tea, she was surprised to find Richard home. The invitation had come from Nancy alone. They lived in a modest ranch house on the east side of Casper, and without all the holiday decorations, the house was spare. The living room contained a cloud-like couch. The tables all had ornate legs with curving columns. There were prints on the wall of Indian warriors wearing headdresses. There were the heads of deer watching them. Richard is a good hunter, and every fall fills their freezer with antelope, deer, and sometimes elk. Nancy brings Chitra a steaming cup of coffee. On the table is cream in a pitcher shaped like a cow. The cream comes out of its mouth. "Do you like Casper? Have you settled?" Nancy asked. "Yes," said Chitra, and she meant it. Before they lived in Casper, they lived in Toronto for almost a year. Before that, they were in India. Toronto exhausted her. It was full of other Bengalis, and every weekend they went to Indian party after Indian party. Parties where satellite TV blared cricket or Indian movies. Parties where all the wives would put on their best saris and jewelry. Parties where endless cups of tea were drunk. The talk would always be of India, or where the best schools were to send their children. Here in Casper, they know few other Indians, and in many ways it's a relief. She can wear jeans and cotton tops, and when they are invited to any function, she simply goes to the bakery of the grocery store and buys donuts by the dozens, cookies with frosting the color of God's. Richard Larson does not join them at first. He comes in after their coffee has been drunk, when Chitra is admiring Nancy's quilts, which she has spread across an overstuffed pink chair in the living room. "So the senator's in Riverton. I hope he's not gambling away your fortune," Richard Larson laughs. Chitra does not know of the casino there, but she laughs along. Richard takes a hard look at Chitra's sari. She had worn it because it felt polite, because she was going visiting. It is a simple one, blue rayon with a series of dancing birds on the border. "I like your costume, your dress," he says. "I like the one you wore to the Christmas party." She's not sure if Richard Larson is flirting or stating a fact. She had worn one of her wedding saris to the Christmas party. It was purple silk, ornate with heavy gold work. It had been stiffly packed for months and so starched she felt she couldn't walk properly. "Thank you." There was a quiet at the kitchen table. It was just past lunchtime. A clock in the kitchen ticked a little beat. "These fabrics are very pretty," Chitra said. She pointed to the calicos and the patterns of the quilts. Yes, Nancy has an eye for color. And then Richard Larson asked her for something she could never tell Raja. He asks if he can try on a sari. By the time they hit Medicine Bow, Hari is awake and asking to stop. They bypass the Virginian Motel, which means nothing to them, and instead go to a small gas station. The inside smells of smoke. They buy sweet coffee and chocolate and then get on the road again. Raja takes in the wind turbines outside Medicine Bow. The town is almost bordered by them. In driving into that place, they look like cartwheeling crosses, marking some sort of sacred space. He thinks he's clever to think this and begins to tell Chitra his observation, but instead tells Hari. "Do you see those crosses?" Hari scans out the window of their Honda and says blankly, "They're wind turbines." His class has been learning about green energy at school, and turbines are the newest point of contention in Wyoming. Some say coal bed methane brings salty water, and wind turbines ruin the view that so many flocking to Wyoming crave. "They look like crosses, no?" There is a church near their home in Casper, which has 3 large crosses like sentries posted outside their building. When they first drove by it, Chitra and Raja had thought they were drying clothes on one of them, as purple cloth was draped on the arms like shawls. Chitra squints out the window. She sees a pump jack. And that fellow then, he looks like he's bowing to Allah. Prayers abound on the prairie for them. They continue their drive. The pump jack pulls up more oil. When Richard Larson asks if he can wear a sari, Nancy Larson leaves the room with a handful of quilts in her arms like a shield. You want to see a sari? Chitra's not sure what to make of his request. Richard Larson laughs nervously. I'd like to try one on, if that's okay. He has lost a lot of the blusters she's seen in the office. He looks at his cowboy boots, which are ostrich and stippled like a pimply face. You mean Nancy wants to try one on? Chitra is still confused and wondering if this is a kind of trick. She wonders if it has something to do with Raja at work. Richard Larson is embarrassed, but then he gains back some of the bravado she has heard when he calls their house looking for the senator. It's like those people you talked about in India at the Christmas party. Chitra thinks back to the holiday party and she remembers the white elephant drinking wine the color of rosewater, but she doesn't catch his drift. And then she remembers her talk about hijras and how she found them happy while Raja found them a nuisance. Chitra, I'm going to show you something. He pronounces her name Chitra. She follows him into the basement, past a pool table and more deer watching them in a solemn line. He takes her into a room with wood-paneled walls. The floor is concrete. In the room are several large safes, or what Chitra thinks are safes. This is where I keep my guns, he says, pointing to a safe. Kids, I told the senator if he takes up hunting, he needs to get something like this. You don't want Harry there getting into guns. Nancy and Richard have one other child besides Luke, a girl named Gretchen Larson. She's in the army and stationed in Germany. There is a narrow door with a lone padlock on it in the room. Richard Larson takes a ring of keys from his pocket and opens the lock. It is a small room, meant at one time as a kind of pantry. Inside is a little vanity with an oval mirror. A bench is tucked neatly in the middle. On the surface of the table is a wide array of makeup. Compacts, eyeshadows that look like an artist's palette, brushes of all sizes, lipsticks lined up like bullets. There is a full-length mirror next to the vanity and is also oval and swivels on its wooden base. A stained glass floor lamp stands in the other corner, and next to it is a plush chair. But unlike the cloud chairs from the living room, this one has a Victorian feel. It's an elegant chair, light mauve with a kind of paisley pattern. It is not a Nancy Larson chair. There are framed paintings on the wall, and again they are different. They are of flowers, of English cottages with thatched roofs. But the one thing in the room that delights her the most is a metal bookcase. Lined up are mannequin heads all in a row, and on each of the heads is a blonde wig in various hairstyles. A straight bob, a curly bob, long Rapunzel-like hair, and a cut with layers framing the face. The mannequins line up and look like the deer heads they passed on the way into the room, watching and taking it all in. Chitra does not say anything because she is genuinely unsure of what to say. This is the condition she felt a lot in Toronto, but since being in Wyoming, she has lost this to some degree. She appreciates not having anyone ask her why Hari is losing his Bengali, why she now cooked burgers, and didn't she know Japanese cars were the way to go. Richard Larson walks back into the room with the safes and turns the dial at one. Chitra half expects he's going to show her his guns as if they are similar to the display of makeup. But when Richard Larson opens the heavy door of the gun safe, it's like he's opened a closet. Inside is a rack of dresses, and they are beautiful. They are the kind of dresses she has seen on TV, the kind of dresses as a little girl in India she thought American women wore. Her biggest disappointment since arriving in Wyoming is seeing how sloppy women are. In the grocery store, she marvels at the loose sweatpants and the stained winter coats most women wear. She has to give it to Nancy Larson. She's matchy, but she dresses well. There are dresses with sequins that look like silver fishes. There are taffeta dresses in which the fabric whirls in discrete patterns. There is a suit with Native American beadwork in the shape of flowers. There are slips like valentines hanging on padded hangers. Richard Larson, who for the most part has been quiet, says this, "I'm not gay and I love my wife." Chitra nods. Nancy's known about this since before we got married. That's 24 years now, and she's okay with it. You have to know I'm not gay. I just like to put these things on. It's not like your country. People don't consider it lucky. Chitra touches the pink satin dress. It's strapless and has a large bow at the waist. Along the hem is lace. She wants to explain the complexities of hijras, their place, but instead she strokes the dress. Okay, she answers. Richard Larson sees her face. Would you like to try it on? When they arrive at the graduation, they are late. They are unsure where to park and end up walking in circles around the university campus. Chitra is wearing an orange sari and slip-on heels, and so she struggles to keep up with Hari and Raja, who are both in sports coats, press pants, and ties. "Do you want to go to school here?" she yells up to Hari. Hari turns around and gives her a pained look. "Baba says I'll go to school in India, to IIT. Why would I go here?" Chitra has no answer. She knows that school, Hari's schooling, should be her singular focus. That is why she has held off on having other children. Raja wants more. She thinks of the IUD she had put in Toronto, her secret, her own broken cartwheeling cross inside her uterus. It gives her a kind of power, a kind of energy. When they find the stadium, they do not sit with the Larsons. Luke Larson is graduating in engineering. He will come back to Casper at the end of the summer and begin work at the same firm as Raja and Richard. The sons sit in hardback seats and hold a program embossed with the logo of the university. Inside is row upon row of names. Hari plays a pocket video game. If the ceremony is having any influence on his future academic career, it does not show. Chitra and Raja watch as speeches are given, a woman sings, and the graduates file out onto the stadium floor just like a movie. As they walk out, the graduates walk 2 by 2, and in their black gowns and tasseled hats, they look like walking lamps. Their faces beam. They look fresh-faced and ready for the future. Chitra finds she's strangely happy and excited for these young people, for their accomplishments, for the future that lies before them. She follows their names in the program. She takes pictures of graduates she does not know. Chitra decides that day in the basement not to try on the dress. Instead, Richard Larson takes her back into the little room and shows her albums of himself in various outfits. When he wears dresses, he likes to be called Clara, and Clara, from what Chitra can tell, is demure, everything Richard Larson is not. She imagines that Nancy Larson has taken these photos, as most of them have been taken in the wood-paneled safe room. There are pictures of Clara in suits, in dresses, even in a velour tracksuit. The only sari Chitra has is the one she's wearing, and so until she can next come over, she gives Richard Larson a taste of what wearing a sari is like. When they go back upstairs, she picks up one of Nancy Larson's quilts. It's a log cabin quilt, all in shades of blues and greens. It's thick and awkward, but Chitra drapes the quilts around him in a faux sari. "It will look like this," she laughs, and Richard laughs with her, as the weight and bulk of the quilt are nothing like a sari. She feels amazingly light for knowing this about Richard Larson. The secret moves inside her. Nancy Larson does not appear again on that visit. Richard Larson shows Nancy Chitra out, and she promises to bring back the purple sari for him to try on. Richard Larson does not ask her not to tell Raja about this request, but she knows not to. It is unspoken between them. This kind of thing can get you killed in Wyoming. The ceremony is long, and when it's over, they meet at Luke Larson's apartment. It's near the university. The apartment is filled with Nancy's family, who are the Boyds. The Shens are one of the first to arrive, and since they've never been to a graduation party, they all sit quietly in the corner until Richard and Nancy Larson arrive. "Senator, Chitra!" Richard Larson exclaims their names when he arrives. He's wearing a kind of suit with the same cowboy boots he wears most days. Around his throat is a bolo tie with a turquoise stone. He has a large elk tooth ring on his finger. Nancy Larson is wearing a flowered dress. She smiles a thin smile at the Sens. It is Raja who speaks for them. "You must be proud of Luke. Such a lot of graduates. What a sight." He's genuinely happy for Luke Larson and wishes his wife would show more spirit. Yes, you all get some food now," said Richard. He doesn't look at Chitra, which disappoints her. She had picked the orange sari because she knew Richard Larson would appreciate it. Western women seem to only notice the sari's color, but Richard Larson notices the intricacies of a sari, the weave, the fabric, the zari work. In fact, Richard Larson is the only person who has asked her anything beyond, "Are they hard to wear?" When Chitra goes back to the Larsons, she brings a suitcase of saris. She has a purple one from the Christmas party, but she also packs a variety of saris. For fun, she puts in a salwar kameez and a box of jewelry, which she has removed from the small safe they keep in the cupboard of their bedroom. It also holds their passports and their visas. Nancy Larson lets her in, and again they have coffee alone. They eat lemon bars. Chitra finds herself driving the conversation. They do not mention the purpose of her visit. "You must be missing Gretchen, so far away," she asks. "Yes, but we email." The clock's ticking punctuates her sentences. Nancy Larson is not a talker. Richard appears as they are finishing their coffee. This time Raja is in Cheyenne, but will be back later that night. "How do you like this weather?" he asks. It had been snowing on and off for days, and now the streets were a slushy mess. Chitra is still new at driving, and Richard Larson knows this. "I have to get a big broom to clean the car and wear boots." Chitra lifts up her sari to reveal a new pair of brown leather boots. She had put on a sari especially for the visit, but had spent the week in sweats and jeans, and suddenly understood the women at the grocery store. Chitra motions to the suitcase. I've brought many choices. She walks over and opens the suitcase and begins to spread out the saris on the same chair which Nancy showed her the quilts. She unfolds the saris to show the palus, which are rich in decoration. She has a Kanchipuram silk sari, a handloom sari, a block print sari, saris with fake crystals affixed in the pattern like stars. She likes showing someone her clothes. In Toronto, she worried her saris weren't fancy enough, but here, spread across the upholstery, they look sumptuous. They look like wealth. Richard Larson takes them all in. He runs his hands over the silks, the cottons, even the rayons. He is quiet. It is Nancy Larson who breaks the silence. I could make a nice quilt with these, she says. I'm going to end there. So if you want to know what happens in this with the family, you can, oh God, I did it again. You can read the story. So that story, yeah, it's just a little bit, I should just give a little bit of a preface by saying I went to school with Matt Shepard. We were classmates together, and some of you probably know he was the University of Wyoming student who was killed. It was just actually the anniversary of his death. In 1998, he was beaten to death, and it was just a hate crime that had a lot of, became a really big national story. But Matt and I went to school together. We actually acolyted in church together, and mostly knew him through church. So it was very weird at his funeral, which was in my hometown, to see sort of, that was the first time I ever saw the Westboro Baptist Church protesting. And, he was a kid that, again, we acolyted together, and he was very little. And I used to always remember when we went down to read the gospel, he was so small I would always have to crouch down to be at, our torches would be at the same level. So I was thinking a lot, I guess I should say, in this story, Wyoming is one of those states that the cowboy sort of idea of being masculine and really, the Marlboro Man was a real guy from Riverton, Wyoming, and that idea of masculinity is so entrenched there. And I don't know, I wanted to write a story about that that a lot of people that we think are really, I don't know what masculinity even is, but I wanted to write a story in response to that. So that was sort of my, I guess, a little bit of the background of that story. So, yeah, does anyone have any questions? Or not? Otherwise, I'll just keep talking about anything else you don't want to hear. Yeah.
I haven't read your collection, but is it a collection that you carefully crafted to make sure that the stories didn't just a certain
When I put it together, I was saying to the students I was talking to earlier, I think with an MFA, you often just have a bunch of stories, and you're just trying out a bunch of craft things, but definitely once I graduated, I wanted to, and I was on my own, I thought, no, I want to tell a story of a different Wyoming that a lot of people don't. Again, Annie Proulx writes the perfect Wyoming story. She does that way better than me. She wrote Brokeback Mountain. That story is way better about masculinity than anything I could write. But her stories were definitely not a Wyoming I knew, because I grew up in an oil and gas town. I didn't grow up on a ranch. I didn't really grow up with that background. So I wanted to write that story. And I also felt like so many Indian American writers who I love, like Jhumpa Lahiri is an amazing, she writes perfect stories. But her and Chitradeva Karuni, who Will and I both worked with at Houston, their stories are set in places like Boston or California, or just places where the immigrant experience is, I think, easier. I think it's still hard wherever you go to, but in Boston there are Indian grocery stores, there are Indian social clubs, there are Indian restaurants. Growing up, there's not one Indian restaurant in the state of Wyoming. Actually, no, I take it back. There actually weirdly is a truck stop outside of Cheyenne that serves Indian food, because there are a lot of Punjabi truckers. But there's no Indian grocery store. We drove 280 miles to Denver to get our groceries. It's just such a different experience to be a rural immigrant. And most Super 8 motels in Wyoming are all run by Indians. A lot of Gujaratis run motels. So most of the ones we knew were living in these tiny towns in a motel, which I can't even imagine how horrible, not horrible, I love Wyoming, but it's really different than being an immigrant like Houston, where there's Little India. So I just wanted to write about that. I really wanted people to realize, like, I imagine it's a little bit similar here, like where there are probably pockets of where people live where it's just like, whoa, you don't ever see a reflection of yourself. And that, I wanted to write that story, I guess. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking along those lines, having so few Indian families
Yeah.
in town, that would put a lot of expectations, of course, stereotypes, both positive and negative,
Yeah.
probably, on you as you were growing up. Did you feel that was sort of a weight that you had to carry?
It is, but I'm biracial, so my dad's white, so not that that was less expectation, but I think it was easier for me because my last name's McConaughey, my dad's Irish, he grew up in Ireland. I actually hold an Irish passport, which is funny. So I think there was a little less, my parents were maybe not as traditional, I think, in terms of, they already had a very non-traditional marriage. My mom was the only one of her siblings that didn't have an arranged marriage. But again, you know, the one really good thing about being, I like this a lot actually about being in India, or being in Wyoming, is that Indians don't segregate themselves there. And that was a real lesson to me when I moved to Houston. I thought, oh, this is amazing. I'm going to be around a bunch of other Indians. It's going to be like, I'm going to have my people. And really quickly I realized, like, no, the Gujaratis hang out with the Gujaratis, the Bengalis hang out with the Bengalis, the Tamil, like I'm Tamil, Tamilians hang out with other Tamil people. Like, everybody segregates out and doesn't talk to each other. But in India, there's so few, or in Wyoming, sorry, I keep saying India. In Wyoming, there's so few of us that, like, we all are like, we love each other. So it, like, in some ways, it's actually better, I think, because we all are friends. I mean, just 2 weeks ago on campus with the Indian students, we did Diwali. I'm not Hindu, but you know, we all celebrate. I think we're all just so excited to have a night where we can eat Indian food and like be together as other Indians. That Diwali is a huge thing on our campus, but it's like Muslim students, you know, Buddhists, Christian. We're all like doing it. And I think partly because we're so happy to have each other. So I think in some ways it's kind of nice to not. I think the expectations may be a little less. Well, not less, but it's different in a place like Wyoming. Yeah.
Tell me more about the experience of writing Strong's place. You recognize that your experience of place is, well, not necessarily an outsider, different from the one that people think of when they associate with that place.
Yeah, and I had it in two ways in my stories because, like, I had it with my Wyomingness, and I had it with like the exoticness of being Indian. And it was interesting when my agent read the first round of the stories. When she came back, I thought, oh God, she's going to ask me to like exoticize being Indian more, because I don't think my stories are very exotic in a lot of ways. And it was interesting because she was like, can you make it more Wyoming? And I was like, wait, what? And I'm like, I don't live in Jackson Hole, and the Tetons and Yellowstone are not something I see it at all, hardly at all. And again, I'm from a really ugly oil and gas town. Like, we have a Walmart on both sides and a refinery, and like there's nothing about the town I grew up in that you'd think, that is a beautiful picture of Wyoming. You'd be like, what? So I think writing about place was like, if anything, I wanted to just be like, this is not the Wyoming you're expecting. Because if you're expecting like the Alps and beautiful, you know, beautifulness, it's probably not going to happen. But that being said, I teach Annie Cruz's book in one of my classes, and I always have a lot of ranch kids, and they're just like, what is this picture of a ranch that she puts out? They don't like her stories, and I mean, I love them, but I have no experience on a ranch, so probably I think they're awesome because I don't know. I don't know if you ever get it right as a writer, right? So I just try to, I mean, it's so cliche, but I just try to write what I know and explain it. But I think actually some people in Wyoming were like, you didn't make Wyoming seem as pretty. It's pretty though. Yes.
What are you working on now? What do we have to look at?
I'm finishing a novel right now, and it's also set in Wyoming. I'm clearly a one-trick pony. And it's set in the 80s in Wyoming, and It has to do with two girls that committed murder, and you know quickly that they did it, but it's trying to figure out why. And I wanted to write about, a lot of Indian families live together in extended family situations. I did growing up. Actually, my uncle and aunt lived with us, and I don't know, it brings in some interesting dynamics into a house. I didn't kill anybody though, I'll tell you that. Luckily, not yet. No, not yet. Sorry, that came out totally wrong. I will never kill someone. But it was, yeah. So I'm working on a novel. Yeah. Any other questions? God, I keep doing this. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to give you entertainment that is not the reading, I suppose. Any other questions?
What was the choice to go back to WoW? Why go back? When Mindy used to
Yeah.
so
I love the land there. Yeah. And it's funny because I'm not outdoorsy, and so actually it's hilarious that I love Wyoming so much because I don't mountain climb or backpack. I always tell people I'm a poetic outdoorsman. I'm like, I like to sit outside and just soak it in a Wordsworthian sort of way, but I guess he trekked around. But I love the land. I like living there. I'm actually really, really rural person. I don't really like crowds or people. Or the first time I moved to I lived in India and worked at a publishing house, and I thought it was going to kill me actually living there because just spatially I'm so used to just space and quiet. And the first month I lived there, it was just such an adjustment to have people and cows and horns and everything. But I love it there. And also, everyone I know that's of color leaves there. Like, no one stays. And I think that I like teaching at the university. I like that a lot of times the students have huge stereotypes of what most of the Indian professors they know are like in the sciences. And I think it's, I just like, I like being like, I'm from here, and there are some of us that are of color that are from here. Because there are a lot of stereotypes I think about Indian people. Like, especially, like I'm not in math and science, and I'm terrible at both, so terrible. Yeah.
I'm teaching a class this semester. There's such an amazing Native American tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Realize children
Mm-hmm.
and small things. So, is there a community of Indian American writers?
Yes and no. I feel like we're very disorganized as a group. Like at AWP every year, like we do not meet as a group. I think more and more, I mean, it's just that a lot of the Indian American writers I know, like Jhumpa Lahiri, they're very shy people. And like, I read with Salman Rushdie in February. That was amazing. That was absolutely amazing. So I think we do stick to, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting, since my books come out, I haven't read at that many Indian groups, so maybe not, actually, that we're not that sort of, though I was in India in February and in January, and I read there, and I have to admit, I'm more excited about a lot of Indian writers rather than Indian American writers, which is a very nice thing to say, but there's so much cool writing coming out of India right now. Right now, with the political climate in India being what it is, with the, Modi's party is rather extreme. Well, I don't want to take issue, but he's very Hindu, and so a lot of writers have been censored in the last few months. So I think it's kind of interesting watching. Right now, a lot of writers have given back their major writing awards because they're very upset of some of the censorship issues in India. So I'm sort of more interested in there. But I feel like when I was in India, the group of writers there were much more cohesive and kind of together. I feel like in the US, though that being said, there's a group on Facebook called the Red Sari Club, which is all Indian writers who've had a red sari on their cover, which is very unfortunate. because I think the stereotype of having a red sari is very prevalent. When I was negotiating my book cover, I said, please no mended hands, no red sari, no hot pink, no, I didn't want anything that was a stereotype. So in that way, they're kind of together. But so I got a hotel sign instead. Anything else? Any other questions? We good? I feel like I should say something more profound or something. I don't have anything.